Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome back to day one of Mix Presents Sound for Film and Television. I'm Tom Kenny, I'm the editor of Mix Magazine, and over the next half hour, we'll be talking about production on the set, specifically comms for socially distanced and zone media production, presented by ClearCom, a first-time sponsor of our event. It's interesting today and very timely for this topic because the set is undergoing a huge transformation. Production is back and ramping up slowly across the country. Obviously, there are new safety and hygiene protocols going on, new ways of working, some of them forced by compliance, some of them not. We're fortunate today to have a panel of experts from across the country. We're represented by Peter Schneider, founder of Gotham Sound, New York City, who has been supplying packages over the last many months to productions in and around town, and he's a mixer himself. We also have Brent Marchenski from Toronto. Brent was one of the first people back in Canada in production with the show Master Chef Canada. He has some interesting anecdotes from the set. We're also joined by Jerry Formicola, president, Second City Sound in Chicago, out of the Cinesite complex, also involved in a number of production packages and production back and booming. And finally, we have Richard Lightstone, a sound mixer, a journalist, Yahtzee board member, former president of the CAS, who has a wealth of experience to help guide us through this. So thank you, gentlemen, and welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this morning. Peter, we might as well start with you. New York City, you're back sometime April, May. What's it been like? What is this notion of why comms on the set are important right now?
Yeah, sure. First, I'll just say thank you, Tom, for having us, and ClearCom for having us. When the pandemic first hit, there was a huge push by news organizations to keep the flow of information going. And so we were able to help them provide audio for that. Now that production is starting again, it's exactly like you said. It's starting, but it cannot start in the same way. And I think it's worth sort of giving a brief overview of how communications happens on a typical film set and scripted television set. For the most part, it's exchange of information via walkie-talkies and via quick private conferences, ad hoc huddles, if you will. And that cannot happen now, obviously due to COVID regulations and concerns over spreading the virus. So that's sort of where we have been able to supply lots of different full duplex communication systems.
Interesting. So what's a typical set looking like then, Peter? I mean, are we talking about people in front, middle, and back? Are we talking about very limited access on a set, very few number of people? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd have to talk about what kind of set, because it's important to distinguish commercial sets from episodic sets, and even to a certain extent from feature sets. And they all look a little different. Primarily, the idea of zones is being enforced. There's different meanings to different interpretations of what a zone is, but for the most part, the closest zone to the actors is the most protected zone, because obviously they're the ones that cannot wear a mask when they do their job. And so there is severe limitations into how many crew people can access that. It's often referred to as the red zone. Spreading out from there, you have different zones with varying distances from that initial red zone. And so a lot of what we're seeing is how do we facilitate natural conversation that can happen between zones and within zones. Walkie-talkies are a pretty blunt instrument. Everybody on a film set and a TV set are used to walkies. It's a blunt instrument because only one person can talk at a time on a channel. And so that's really been the push for full duplex style wireless comms.
Now we're going to get to this in a minute about the natural sound and the full duplex, but maybe we could jump over to Brent. Brent, you are the first production back in Canada, I understand, with the roughly 80 people on the set for Master Chef. Could you give us an example of a zoned production in action? Obviously, we're in the infancy right now. We're all trying to figure this out. But what do you have going, Brent? What's it look like for you on a daily basis?
Well, when we started MasterChef Canada, um, we sat down, production sat down with their health and safety officers, and they basically mapped out the whole studio and offices and support offices, and said, okay, so if the talent is going to be here, what are the zones? And so we basically zoned everything out, and within those zones we had pods. So the group's departments would be pods, and they could travel within certain zones. So everyone had their pods and everyone had their zones, and all of a sudden, this whole world of communication, which we're so used to in episodic or docu-reality type of shooting, just brought it up another level. It's very different than film, where Peter was talking about. The means of communication on most film sets are huddles and walkie-talkies. On a broadcast set, a multi-camera set, we use pretty much a matrix system and free speak belt packs and a duplex system. But this whole area of zones and pods and so forth amplified the need of actually making that system grow. So we could all, everyone, pretty much can communicate with each other, because now we are limited in our social distancing and physical distancing on set.
And in that sense, it must be scalable according to each day, each production. You have 80 people. I mean, were the first couple of weeks odd on the set? I mean, did it feel a little odd that you couldn't walk up and talk to somebody?
Well, after being isolated for like 3 months, where you had hardly any contact with anybody, everybody first thing, they saw someone, it's like, oh, I give you a hug. It's like, can't do that. It just, don't come near me. Just give me a little, elbow tap. It was difficult. Yeah, we're social people. We want to talk. We want to, communicate face to face without a mask. We want to see people's lips move. It was difficult. It was difficult for people that weren't used to communicating through comms now on a communication device, be it a walkie-talkie that's been interfaced into our matrix system or a free speak belt pack. So it was very different.
For this audience, film and television, and it's not typically been common on the set. So maybe Jerry, out of Chicago's Cinesite, this is something that's common in broadcast and event production, certainly in concert music production. Jerry, what's it been like for you, sort of transferring over to this idea of comms in Chicago?
So I think one of the things for me is I come from more of a broadcast background, where interfacing either off of a truck or off a studio where you had a big intercom infrastructure. And one of the things that we've done is with some of our clients who would do large multi-camera shoots for an episodic where they're doing 3, 4, 5 cameras, we would bring on comms. And it was always a learning curve. Peter alluded to it earlier, as far as radios are super common. They're what people are used to on a set. Everybody has one, but it is a blunt instrument. We don't typically communicate in a simplex fashion. We're used to talking to somebody, having them immediately talk back. That's how we operate as human beings. Intercom operates that way as well, but it isn't something that people on episodic or large film sets have been used to. So we found over the course of a long period of time, as we developed one client, we would kind of teach them, hey, you could do this. You could have small groups where the A camera or the B camera or the C camera could have their own private channel. So showing people how that works and bringing that along has been an important part of basically teaching those clients how they can function beyond the standard walkie-talkie fare.
Peter, could you add to that? Because in an earlier talk, this being new to film and television production, has it been willingly accepted? Is it an educational process? What are
Well,
we
I
talking
tell
about
you,
here?
it's been an educational process for me personally, in the sense that this push for communications is coming from the camera department. One DP I spoke to was told they don't want him within 6 feet of anybody on the set, and so that's a huge change for them, and that spreads out. So from there, you get ADs wanting to make announcements to the set. And so that becomes a voice of God system. And then from there, you want the director to be able to talk to a little speaker to the actor, so that they can have a quick conversation without having to meet face to face, or sometimes an earwig, a hidden earpiece. And a wireless intercom system facilitates all of this style of communication. The other thing that has been interesting for me as a development in this journey is we are putting these systems on carts and having them operate with DC backup. And that's something unique to episodic and film sets, where it has to be brought out from a truck on location. There is some location shooting. That's the good news. And in a perfect world, you would power it on and it would be running within minutes. Obviously each location is different, but that's sort of the goal. So for one HBO show, we're actually setting it up on the same cart that the DP watches the camera from. So this is all sort of new technology come about from having to meld these two different worlds.
Richard Lightstone, if I might have you chime in here, you have a lot of experience across all around the country, film and television. What's your take on zone media production, Richard, and what we see in now and what we might see moving forward?
Yeah, well, I've had the experience, luckily, of doing some early video shoots with shows like Super Dave Osborne, where Brent and I crossed paths, Saved by the Bell, and then, of course, episodic and feature production. So in all those realms, and even a few days on sitcoms, sitting in for other really good sitcom mixers. Over those years, I've had experience with using ClearComm systems. But in the current environment, I think it's really going to come down to cost. Budgeting is a real big issue as far as all these productions are doing. And it's really more of a brave new world out there, where a lot of the guidelines are a starting point, and it depends on the level of the ability of the producers to maintain control, and or the COVID supervisors, and all of that creates an environment of a lot of questions, really, on how each set's going to be run. And so far, from my own experience and anecdotal conversations with other mixers, each show has its own set of protocols. Some are really strict, where they actually have most of the crew leave the stage, if it's a stage or a set, and have rehearsals with a minimal number of people. And others where it's kind of loosey-goosey, where people wear masks and face shields, but nobody's really enforcing those. It depends on the show.
Well, thankfully, we do live in an age where technology can help fill some holes brought on by safety concerns and such. We have words like scalable, full duplex communication, the need for communication greater than ever at a time when we're farther apart, in a sense.
And this kind of dovetails into the last topic that we were talking about, as far as the COVID compliance officers and such. One of the things we're seeing, our offices are literally right next door to a production which has started back in the last couple of weeks. And one of the things that we've seen that they're taking this seriously is they're actually separating people. They've done they have a location unit and they have a stage unit. None of the crew crosses the line between those two units. So they're separating people. We found that they're talking about the fact that they have some art department people in the offices, and they have some art department people who are living on stages. So they've been really good about isolating people who don't need to be there. they're doing consistent testing 3 times a week. But one of the things with this, and kind of dovetails into communications, is how you can take those people who are in different locations and potentially have them be communicating directly. There are apps like the ClearComm Agent IC app, which allow you to be a part of the system. You can even plug an LQ box directly to a FreeSpeak and have 8 licenses that allow people who need that communication with set, but don't necessarily have to be there. They can be on an app on their phone, they can be on an iPad, that sort of thing, to be able to have that same sort of communication and have whoever is their first or second be doing the on-set communication for them. I think that right now, in being able to keep people separate, is a huge and valuable resource relative to keeping everybody safe on set.
Okay, Brent, could you add to that and sort of get specifically what your setup's like?
We have 2 systems. We basically had 3 productions going almost back to back, so we kind of checkerboard our systems. So one of our systems, we have a ClearComm Medium, and our other system's a ClearComm Delta, which is all matrix, and it's all scalable. So for the most part, we've had MasterChef was our biggest show. So we had basically 2 EQ cards. We were running around 38 FreeSpeak belt packs over 1.9 and 2.4. We had around 30 panels, and we had 6 walkie-talkies interfaced into the system with around 40 walkie-talkies working off the system. So we interfaced all those elements together. We didn't have anybody offset, even though we had offset monitoring. We had streaming for the network, but they didn't need Agent IC.
Richard, can you chime in a little bit and tell me how you see communication, both on-set and on-set with offset, evolving?
Well, first of all, remote listening and viewing is not something new. Post-production has been doing that for decades, actually, with T1 lines and probably video links to allow producers who couldn't, for example, get crosstown in Los Angeles to view a mix and make comments and or watch the final playback. As mixers, we've been social distancing for decades. We've been working farther and farther from the set, 100 feet minimum for many years. So that's not a problem. What the real issue will be is how the boom operator, utility, and perhaps a 4th person might be incorporated to manage the set, booms, wiring, sanitizing, etc.
I will say that the app-based intercom is definitely here and actively being used. I was involved in production last week, and I was based in New York. The production had another instance based in LA, and then there was yet another instance in a different part of LA that was doing the recording. All of it done via internet, via app, as far as that goes. Multiple channels going on between tech and also producers and such. So there was lots of activity that was all able to be done that way. There is a bit of latency that I think we have to get used to sometimes in that fashion, but I think overall it works very well, particularly as we talked about earlier, people who don't necessarily need to be on set, but you find they may normally have traveled to set, walk into set, have a direct conversation with somebody and walk out. We can't do that right now. And so these applications give us the opportunity to still maintain that communication. The communication.
One thing I would say to add on to that too is a system like a FreeSpeak has enough fidelity where it can be used for program audio for most crew people. Mm-hmm. And that eliminates a whole other set of headphones.
Absolutely. So what we did on our second production, we usually use a MADI headphone system to integrate program sound to all our panels. But because it was tied up on the other set, we actually used sort groups, and which, if you're not familiar, but basically you can take a digital feed, be it MADI or be it Dante, bring it into the comm system, and basically through a sort group on your belt pack or on your panel, you can listen to any channel that you want to listen to. And it's good as, probably better than a Comtech feed.
Now this is a responsibility. Comms become an on-set responsibility that from an episodic standpoint, even if you're adding a person who is essentially your sanitizing person, there's not really somebody who's taking responsibility for that. And also there is some setup to it. There is somebody who needs to kind of handhold it during the initial phases. I'm not sure how you want to approach that, or if that's just a statement of fact. I think also somebody actually thinking about who needs to talk to who, what groups need to communicate back and forth. I think oftentimes that's not part of the mix of what people are used to, because they're like, channel one is production. I'm just going to turn on to that and talk to everybody. Versus, hey, I'm the DP and I need to talk to these people. Plus I want to talk to my lighting board person. Plus maybe I want to talk to the first AD, those sorts of things. So somebody actually getting the advance on that and thinking about that before it actually reaches set, and then somebody who can tweak it so people get what they're hoping for versus it just being a mess out the door.
That's true. And I would add to one thing that's ClearComm specific that they do that makes it a little bit easier is because the configuration is a web page. It's easy to remote into it. So, like a person on set or offset who needs to go in and change some stuff doesn't have to be at the rack to do it.
And I just want to add one thing, is one of the things that we really need to address is the ability to have a longer prep time for the sound department. Normally on episodics, you're given maybe you're on the location survey, you go to the production meeting, there's a load-in day, and you're on the show, and it might be half a week. I think they have to extend that so you can have real conversations about these communication issues, whether there's voice of God, how the comm system will work, sanitizing, all of this worked out before we hit the set the first day of shooting. And our producer's willing to spend 4 or 5 more days on the production, sound department crew. Again, this all comes down to dollars and cents, and that front end prep is going to save you more money in the end, but we have to speak up and let them know that this is necessary.
If you approach it right from the beginning, being organized, knowing exactly, telling production, it's going to take a little bit longer for the first day because we just need to get our feet. Everybody needs to get used to the new system. It's a new way of doing things. It's a great way of doing things. Just give it a chance. It's going to get better. It's going to, the process is going to get quicker. And for those people that, Jerry, you were saying, you needed to put, little, stickies on the buttons. You play that thing like an instrument after a while. It's like your hand goes on it. You know where your thumb is. It's like for those people who have never played a guitar, it's like you're playing an instrument, and it's phenomenal.
I'd like to give sort of as an exit, I'd like to give each of you a chance to reflect on the fact that this is brand new, and what have you learned, and what would you like to tell your friends out there? Let's just start with you, Peter. I mean, what would you like to say to the community to boost them up?
I would say that maintaining your health is the most important thing going forward. I would say that safety is everyone's responsibility, not just the COVID compliance officer's responsibility. I would also say that we all need to be open to new ways of working. This pandemic has introduced some really interesting changes and some really challenging changes. One thing that I'd like to bring up is air handling systems. Maybe this is not the way to leave this seminar, but an interesting anecdote that I've heard is traditionally, especially in New York studios, you would turn the air handling systems off during a take. Not going to happen post-COVID. And so challenges like, how do we deal with increased noise floor from set? This is a challenge for us as production mixers and our post friends as well. So hopefully from these challenges come new collaborations.
Brent, do you have, what would you like to say to your friends out there in the production world?
Pretty much what Peter said. It's when you're on set, it's not only are you doing your job, but you're being aware of, being safe on set, yourself and how relate and react with other people, and how other people, relate and react with you. So it's, for the most part, it's common sense. Be safe. For those people that are venturing off, especially in film productions that are kind of starting up in Canada, there's a lot of questions that these production managers, these producers have about zones and how these zones are going to work and who's going to work within these zones. It's common sense, and it's basically you have to listen to your departments, your department heads. Communication, it's not that scary. There's Peter is a great resource, a great company, Gotham, to reach out to for communication needs. There are a lot of companies across Canada that supply communication and to integrate communications. Duplex, simplex, they can work together, on set. And I think those two mediums work well on set and will help production through this time of COVID.
Jerry, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think both Peter and Brett have said it, that we all kind of need to be the COVID compliance officer when we're on set. We're very much a social environment in this industry. We're used to working together. We're used to working closely. And right now, that's not feasible. So we need to watch out for ourselves and for each other, because that lean in, or, somebody who doesn't realize they're getting a little too close, we have to go ahead and, say, hey, give me a couple feet, that sort of thing. And I think the tools that these sorts of systems offer to keep us separated but able to work together are truly beneficial. Being able to integrate systems like walkie-talkies that have already been part of the production environment and adding those to newer systems that we're not used to, but we get to learn about and learn how they can help and function and bring us more control to different aspects that we thought we didn't have available to us. So I think it's an opportunity, and I think it's a challenge at the same time.
Richard, anything you'd like to add to that?
Sure. I think the first point is that we in the future have to be more patient. It's going to be a challenge on any set. All of this new compliance regulations are going to tax the crew in terms of how we work together. But we also have to be aware that safety is the biggest concern here. And I hope that what we can do as a community, look at it as a social issue instead of an insurance liability issue. That is where production and producers are really focusing on. I know that the outward expression is, yeah, we care about you, we care about your safety, but truly they don't want the lead actor to get sick, have COVID, shut down, and suddenly production costs zoom to incredible levels. So how is a crew going to be able to work efficiently, as quickly as we always have been expected to do, and at the same time maintain sanitizing the equipment, safety, and follow the protocols. So it's about being aware and just keep on doing what we've been doing, but with a little farther apart than we were before.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Again, a very appropriate and timely topic. And in spirit of communication, I would encourage all our attendees to talk to your friends and neighbors as well. These are tremendous resources here. This is a workflow that's being figured out individually and collectively. Reach out to your community. Reach out to the CAS. Reach out to Peter, Jerry, Brent, and Richard here. And figure out your own way of doing it. We thank you for joining us at the Mix Presents Sound for Film and Television 2020. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. And thank you to ClearCom.